As excitement over the impending release of a new Monster Hunter game began to reach a fever pitch in the MojoPlays office, one employee who had no real experience with the series sheepishly asked, seemingly out of nowhere, "So, why is it fun?" This was a question the rest of us were really not prepared for. Our love for the series had already been secured by hours of 3DS screen time or a breathless weekend with the beta, so at this point, the appeal of the franchise was so ingrained in our minds that it seemed like it had to be self-evident. It's fun because it's Monster Hunter. What a silly question. So while we stammered through some half-hearted responses about brilliant animation, satisfying encounters, and irrepressible charm, we knew in our hearts that the question could only be truly answered by experiencing the phenomenon firsthand. So, thankfully, it is with a bit more confidence that I can say that Monster Hunter World is the best chance yet for those who have been on the outside until now to finally see what all the fuss is about. Of course, those who do know what the fuss is all about will probably be delighted with the update as well. While there's tons of complexity in its underlying systems, the general concept behind Monster Hunter World is ludicrously simple. You hunt large monsters, you harvest their corpses for materials that you turn into weapons and armor, and then you set out with your new gear to hunt even bigger monsters. Rinse, repeat. If this sounds kinda grim, remember that you have a cat companion that follows you at all times too, so, it's a balance.
Huh, meowdy-doo.
Yes, they're customizable, yes, they're awesome, no, it's not okay for you not to like this. Anyway, while this all might seem very similar to the core feedback loop of any action RPG, everything in Monster Hunter World, much like its predecessors, seems to exist solely to fulfill that core function. It's really all about what you've killed, or occasionally captured, how you do it, and all the cool stuff you've made as a result. And I mean that quite literally, because even though this is definitely a deep, complicated RPG in terms of statistics and itemization, your character doesn't actually gain levels or experience. That means that you're not really locked into a particular build either. If you want to switch your hammer-wielding character into a ranged bowgun user, you just gotta craft a bowgun and off you go. By the way, when I say bowgun, basically I mean just like gun. It's a gun. Yeah, you can use guns. Try not to think about it too much. Yes, there is technically a story about a mysterious elder dragon and its arrival in the New World, but that's merely a thread line designed to keep you going from place to place, making boots out of the oversized wildlife along the way. If interesting characters or morally gray decision-making is what you look for in your role-playing games, I'm afraid there's not a lot of that here. I mean, there's definitely a full cast of NPC characters, but they're not really a complicated tangle of motivations and personalities. Nah, they come off more as a team of enthusiastic summer camp counselors, cheering you on to your next big activity. It's gonna be great! You're gonna do great! Woo!
Here, here. Now we're talking!
Actually, I might have gotten a bit ahead of myself here. There are very interesting, very well realized characters to be found here. It's just that they're usually very, very large, and you're trying to bonk them on the head. Yes, the titular monsters of the Monster Hunter games have always been the real stars of the show, and World is no different. Each gargantuan creature has its own unique animations, behavior, and design, meaning that each new quest or bounty that you take on promises to surprise you with new and unexpected thrills. Within the first dozen hours of play, hunters will face a hairy iguana that swallows its prey whole, a primordial coelacanth that burrows in the mud, and some bizarre hybrid of a flying squirrel and a rock viper. If variety is the spice of life, then Monster Hunter World is a veritable farmer's market of the unexpected, at least for the first 30 hours or so of fresh content before you reach the high-rank quests. That variety extends into the items that make up your character as well. There are 14 different weapon classes, ranging from conventional sword and board type setups to wacky things like the hunting horn, which is a literal giant tuba thing that you smack monsters with in combinations to play certain songs and gain special buffs. It's about as hard to use as it sounds. But all of this is to say that there's a huge variety of playstyles accommodated here. And as we mentioned before, you can change your weapon class on a whim at any time, so there's very little excuse for boredom. Of course, veterans of the franchise will know that this has always been the case. So, is Monster Hunter World just an HD version of this already commendable formula? Nope. And it's that third word in the title that really represents the biggest step forward for the series, the world in which you're hunting. While previous versions of the games, both home console and portable, broke the hunting grounds up into individual sections walled off by load times, here, once the initial loading is done, the massive areas are entirely seamless. Open plains lead into tangled warrens of thick foliage or lead downwards into fetid swamps. Hunters will find themselves sliding down ravines, swinging across vines, and sloshing through the mud in environments that feel rich and alive. And it's definitely here that the added processing power of current-gen consoles is best put to use. Not only are loading screens noticeably absent, but the landscape is now crawling with endemic life. Carrion birds arrive next to fresh kills, lizards scurry to and fro in the underbrush, and dung beetles nonchalantly roll their bounty through the sands. Yep, take your time, buddy. There you go, yeah. Oh yeah, and other big monsters kind of have this habit of just showing up. It's really rare to go on a hunt for one monster and only encounter that one monster. Often, your bout with your quarry will be interrupted by another massive beast just kind of strolling through, creating moments of emergent gameplay unlike anything we've seen before. This, along with the abundance of life and seamlessness of the environments, does wonders to immerse you in the new world. The areas you fight in feel less like arenas and more like living places, ecosystems where the battle for life rages on with or without your involvement. Thankfully, Monster Hunter World has brought in some much-needed quality of life improvements in order to help you get to the fun stuff without ever holding you by the hand too much or dumbing down the whole experience. Leading up to release, there was much hand-wringing over the potential casualization of the series. I can safely declare that this has not really been the case. Yes, some things have been made a tad more forgiving, like you can now interrupt most actions by dodging, and you no longer plant your feet like an offensive lineman every time you want to drink a potion. Certain items, like the herbs that make up your healing potions, can be picked up in passing without the need to get down on your knees for a large animation, and the crafting of those potions can be automated to free up some of your busy work. And busy work is really the operative word here. It's quite clear that consideration has been taken to free up your time from needless monotony without taking away from the necessity of the careful pre-hunt preparations that make the series so satisfying at later levels. While the endless system of menus that the series has always featured has definitely not been pared too far down for this version of Monster Hunter, the quality of life improvements have spread into them as well. One of the major gripes with the series has been the somewhat opaque nature of how item drops work and what you have to do to get that big rocky T-Rex to drop one of its claws, for example. Now, your monster manual has detailed breakdowns of monster anatomy for you to pore over, so you're no longer forced to do a Google search to figure out how to get those last elusive bits of scale and bone for your next outfit. As someone who played 4 Ultimate and Generations with his smartphone on his lap at all times, constantly checking the wiki, this is a welcome change. The way you gain benefits from items has also been simplified somewhat, which it might sound like blasphemy on paper, but really in practice it means that you don't have to spend time doing addition and subtraction every time you want to put on a new helmet. I know another area of worry for franchise purists has been the addition of the scout flies, and these are actually probably the biggest new feature in the gameplay. This glowing swarm of insects accompanies you throughout your travels, and they do everything from point out helpful resources, serve as waypoint markers, and, most importantly, lead you to your quarry. While this does bring to mind the less than stellar trail of breadcrumbs systems that games like The Witcher 3 have been criticized for, the way you have to essentially pick up on the monster's scent by finding a handful of footprints and clues helps to sell the whole tracking, hunting angle. That, and the fact that it's pretty gosh darn necessary. Remember, these worlds are big and complex. It's super easy to get turned about and lost. And since monsters have a nasty habit of running away once things start to go sour, allowing the flies to guide you is kind of a welcome addition. And you know what? It's definitely a visual design that might put a few people off, but it's still a much more immersive mechanic than tracking a paintball splotch on your map like in the previous games. Of course, Monster Hunter can just as easily become Monster Hunters, and whether or not you want to experience all of this alone or with strangers and friends online is also entirely up to you. Most of the time I was perfectly content to face the beasts single-handedly, but joining or creating online sessions of up to 16 people, or joining quests already in progress, proved to be a seamless experience during my playtime. You can also shoot out signal flares during your own hunts if you want to call for real-life backup too. Some people swear that they'll only ever play Monster Hunter games cooperatively, but rest assured that you can just as easily never connect your console to the interwebs and still have a heck of a time here. Before we go, I gotta say that veterans of the franchise will probably feel instantly at home in World. For all of the new things they've added, Capcom has still kept the core Monster Hunter experience largely intact. Everything from the way the town is laid out, down to the design of the inventory icons will feel very familiar to longtime fans. It feels like they've added a lot, but they didn't throw much of anything out either, just kind of built upon what was already there. And that's basically the long and short of it. If you're a longtime fan, I'd say that this is pretty much a must-play that will fit like a glove, but still feel brand new and exciting. If you're a newbie, even with a passing interest in the series, or maybe even just a die-hard fan of complex action RPGs, then there's never really been a better time to hop on board.
Cheers!
Monster Hunter World feels like the realization of what the franchise has always meant to be. Unchained from the limits of handheld hardware, this beast can really run. Thanks for watching Mojo Plays. Be sure to subscribe and click on the link in the description below to check out our suggestion page and vote on what content you'd like to see us cover next.